Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Really means a lot to me. Trying to get that plaque, that YouTube plaque behind me. We only have a couple more to get to 100K. Actually, quite a bit more, but you guys and gals can help me out. So this one is back to the basics. I've been lately, ever since Save Our Sites conference, I've been on site mode, just focused on there's so much going on with at the site level right now. Let's do content for the sites. This one is for everyone. It's also especially true for the site's gonna get a lot out of this as well, but the people wanting to start careers in this industry. So CRA monitoring visit red flags. And you may be asked questions about this during your interviews if you have a job interview coming up for monitoring or anything similar. There's a couple of categories. I mean, if we're going to cover everything, this would be thousands of hours of a video, and that's not what YouTube wants. That's not what you want. So I'm going to give you some common ones. So first of all, I'm going to go through the site selection visits and then I'm going to go through the interim monitoring visits because those are the ones where the red flags, those are the ones where you can like avoid red flags if you're a site, and those are generally most of the red flags for monitoring visits are going to be. So, what happens during a selection visit is a site, like it sounds like, the sponsor sends a CRA out to make sure that the site is qualified for the study, that the site is still interested in doing the study, and that the site is capable of doing the study. And so they do a tour, they do a meeting with all the staff, they make sure the CRA makes sure all the requirements are there and the staff has everything they need. Now, some typical red flags at site selection visits that I've seen, especially from inexperienced sites, but also it could happen from the more experienced sites that just get a bit sloppy, are incomplete temperature log, or when you request for something like a CLIA waiver, the site doesn't have it, or they go scrambling and have to look for it, and they tell you, yeah, it's an action item, we have it somewhere. Or another one is the investigational product. Maybe it's in a, maybe they're in conditions that it's not secure, or you can tell it's not double locked, or maybe you walked into the coordinator room and you see investigational product laying all over the place, and it might be a place that's accessible to other monitors from other studies, and those are some red flags. So just secured investigational product, having the CLIA waivers, having up-to-date GCP certificates for the staff, and having updated medical licenses. Now, another red flag, obviously, if you go to a site and it's not an embedded clinic and you don't add a site selection visit and you don't get a good feel for how this site's actually going to recruit, that's a potential red flag too. Now, the rest of the red flags come at monitoring visits, interim monitoring visits, the most common type of monitoring visit by far. So, uh, key focus areas for these visits are source data review, informed consent compliance, drug accountability, delegation log and training, AE and SAE reporting, and query resolution. These are all potential red flags, all in all of these areas, and these are just key focus areas. Another one would be PI oversight. Now, red flag number one, missing or incomplete documentation. These are obviously regulatory risks at play. The missing or incomplete documentation might be anything from informed consent forms. So you might have, I mean, if you have a missing informed consent form, that's horrible. But if you have an informed consent form done improperly, meaning one of the pages was not signed, or a date was blank, or maybe the staff member didn't sign it, those are obviously red flags too. That means that site has issues with the basic GCP because informed consent is arguably the most important part of GCP. That's the whole purpose of that is to inform patients of their participation in the study and the risks and benefits and all that other stuff. And it's very important for GCP, and it's also a huge FDA finding. So incomplete informed consents, very important, and a red flag for sure. Unlogged deviations or just committing deviations to begin with without even knowing that they're deviations. This points to a training problem, and we're going to get into deviations a little bit more, but I do want to get back to deviations because there's a lot. And then, like I said, at the site selection visits, but even ongoing throughout the regular monitoring visits, incomplete logs, so temperature logs having an inconsistent or incomplete cohesion to them. IP accountability, maybe someone started doing IP accountability at the site and then it seems like they kind of stopped. Well, that means either the patient never came back or the staff just never kept up with the log. So these are things that are important. Training logs as well, very important. Um, are the staff training themselves when a new protocol comes? Always keep a monitor ready binder with up-to-date files. So those are just some red flags for the missing or incomplete documentation. Now, protocol deviations, like I said, undermines data reliability and subject safety. So there's a lot of factors for deviations. And so if a monitor comes in and sees a deviation, that's fine. It happens all the time. I would say just about every monitoring visit, if you have a moderate number of patients, you're going to have some deviations, whether minor ones like out of window visits or patient didn't enter their diary on one day, or I mean, just there's minor, and then there's major stuff that involve patient safety. And so you want to get to the root cause of what these things are. If you're the site or the CRA, remember you are working together, not against each other. Poor delegations, probably the underlying root cause for most deviation, or a miscommunication between site staff or inadequate training. So this is where the training logs come in again. Maybe they need to be retrained. This is where that CRA can actually get involved and fill out a training log with the site and maybe sit down and do even a 10-minute training. I've done as a CRA, I've done 10-minute trainings with my sites. Like, hey, I noticed this deviation or this error keeps popping up. It's not always deviation. I want to go through and just do a 5-minute training with you guys. Whoever's here, let's do it. If the PI is not available, that's fine. You guys can train them later. You can train, let me train at least whoever's here from the site, and then they'll complete the log and train everyone else when they're available. So this is one solution for this. Maybe the SOPs, maybe the standard operating procedures for the sites are incongruent with the protocol. Well, in that case, that's kind of a problem because the protocol is not going to change for the site. So the site's going to have to change the SOP if they want to continue doing the study. Now, that should have been caught if that's the issue at the site selection visit or at least at the site initiation visit. Now, if it's caught during the study, okay, you gotta make some revisions, you gotta fill out all the deviation logs. If any impacted patient safety, they gotta be sent to the IRB. And then this is where CAPA plans come in, corrective and preventative action plans. So protocol deviations, they're gonna happen. There's a difference between just regular kind of deviations, run of the mill, or red flag deviations. And as a CRA, your job is to really find and eliminate the red flags as soon as they start popping up, ideally even before they pop up. Number three, data integrity and accuracy. So attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete. Remember ALCOAC. So very common, not necessarily red flag, data entry error. However, consistently repeating the same data entry error can show an issue, an underlying root cause of one of the Alcoa practices or one of the Alcoac, I almost call them virtues, but they're good documentation practices. So if you're noticing the same data entry error all the time, well, what's happening? Let's go look under the hood and see. What is the query actually? Is it ambiguous as to when the data was collected? Are we not sure it's accurate every single time? Are we always changing the same kind of issues? Are we seeing patterns? My own site is undergoing this right now with a psychiatry study because we haven't been able to get the patient's medical records fast enough, and but we're forced to enter data in the EDC, so we go off of a patient narrative. And then once we obtain the records, if we ever do, and patient narratives are not very reliable, but if you don't have anything else, you go with that. When it comes time to counter check it, whether the sub-investigator or the PI talks to the patient, then they document something different because the patient's narrative slightly changed. You start getting inconsistencies. You start getting the same data entry errors over and over again. So at my own site, this was becoming a red flag because it's Alcoac. So what we did is we get this information clear, concise. We changed our source so that we cannot proceed without certain information. And then everyone at least is consistent with what's on the source versus what's on the EDC. Another red flag, if you see as a monitor backdated or undocumented changes. I used to catch this a lot as a CRA. So lab results, let's say today's May 19th, and you could see when the lab was generated, right? Sometimes on these lab results, it'll show when you print it or when you look at the document, generated 519 or printed 519. And sometimes you'll see like some kind of audit. If you see generated 519, yet the PI signed and dated 518, you know that is physically not possible, at least not within our universe or this quantum universe. You cannot time travel and sign something before it was generated. So if you're a sharp CRA, you're going to catch that and say, hey, listen, I don't know what happened here. We can't make this a common occurrence. You got to be really mindful of when things are generated versus when they're signed. Once or twice, okay, I understand you're busy. You could have made a typo, but you're not making typos constantly. And those become red flags. So as a CRA and as a site, you're supposed to make sure you guys are following Alcoac. Another thing is undocumented changes. You go in there and just change something in the source and change something in the EDC without explaining what happened. Is it new information? The EDC is going to ask you when you change a data point, why did you change it? Data entry error? Okay. But then the source should also say data entry error. They should be consistent. Real-time data entry, you got to double check. And really, you need quality control, quality assurance at the site. One of my next hires will be a remote QA person that does nothing but quality assurance for our sites. I'm just waiting for some of our new studies to start enrolling so I can get the ball rolling with this. If you want to have smooth monitoring visits, have a dedicated QA person. If you can't afford that, have the coordinators, if you have multiple coordinators, mock audit each other's trials. Somebody's running that site, whether a lead CRC, a site director, somebody needs to keep track of all this GCP, protocol trainings, licenses. You want to keep communication open with your monitor and the sponsor. You want to organize your documents before the monitor arrives and use checklists or dashboards to track visit readiness. That's it. Don't fear the CRA, be ready for them. And if you are a CRA, maybe this will help you show you where you can actually look under the hood and dig a little deeper. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Comment with your horror stories of monitoring visits. You could be anonymous. Bye bye.